What happens when a carefully planned media appearance turns into an unexpected confrontation? What happens when royal composure meets journalistic persistence, and neither side is willing to yield? The result is a television moment so explosive that it ended with security being called and a guest escorted off set. This is the story of how Meghan Markle's appearance on CBS this morning became one of the most talked about interviews in TV history. But not for the reasons anyone imagined. The morning began like any other at the CBS studios in New York. The production team had spent weeks preparing for the high-profile interview. Meghan Markle was scheduled to discuss her latest charitable initiatives and upcoming projects. It was intended to be a light promotional segment, the kind morning television thrives on: soft questions, inspiring stories, and plenty of room for the guest to shine. Nate Burleson, the former NFL player turned television host, had prepared a list of safe questions that would allow Meghan to share her work while steering clear of controversy. Producers had emphasized this was to be a positive feature, highlighting Meghan's philanthropic work and helping her connect with the American audience. But from the moment Meghan stepped onto the set, something felt off. The cameras couldn't capture it fully, but there was tension in the air. Her smile seemed just a little too practiced, her composure a little too controlled. Her team had provided a list of approved topics, and everyone knew which lines were not to be crossed. "Good morning, Meghan," Nate began, smiling warmly. "Thank you so much for joining us today. Our viewers are eager to hear about the incredible work you've been doing." "Good morning, Nate," Meghan replied in her familiar, measured tone. "Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to talk about causes that are close to my heart." At first, the interview went smoothly. Nate asked about her visit to a local food bank, and Meghan delivered a polished response about the importance of community service and giving back. She spoke of the volunteers she had met and the families being helped, offering heartfelt stories that played perfectly for a morning audience. "It's important to remember," Meghan said, leaning forward slightly, "that behind every statistic, there is a human story, a family struggling, a child unsure of their next meal. Real change happens when we connect on that human level." Nate nodded, asking follow-up questions about her foundation's work and future plans. Everything appeared to be on track. The producers in the control room were pleased. The segment was going exactly as they had hoped. Then the mood shifted. Meghan's smile flickered for just an instant. Nate's expression suggested he had more on his mind than the prepared script. The controlled atmosphere began to crack. "I have to say," Nate continued, his tone still friendly, but with a sharper edge, "it's refreshing to see you focusing on grassroots efforts. Some people, though, question whether celebrity involvement in charity work is always as genuine as it seems." Meghan's posture straightened. "I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?" "Well," Nate replied carefully, still professional, but clearly moving into unapproved territory. "There's sometimes a perception that when high-profile figures get involved in charitable work, it becomes more about publicity than the actual cause. I'm not saying that's the case with you, but how do you respond to critics who question the motives behind celebrity charity work?" The question hung heavy in the air. This wasn't on the approved list. The producers were likely scrambling, but it was too late. The words had been spoken, and Meghan's reaction was immediate. "I think," she said coolly. That question says more about the person asking it than about the work itself. If the first instinct is to question authenticity instead of recognizing positive impact, that reveals a certain perspective. Nate didn't back down. "I'm not questioning your personal efforts, Meghan. I'm asking a broader question about celebrity culture and charity. It's a discussion many people are having, and I believe our viewers deserve to hear your thoughts on it." "Our viewers," Meghan repeated, stressing the word in a way that made it clear she didn't like being grouped into that category. "Deserve to hear about the real work being done to help real people. They don't need manufactured controversy designed to create headlines. The tension was rising. Both host and guest seemed to recognize they were entering dangerous territory, yet neither was willing to back away. Nate, guided by his journalistic instincts, sensed a story more compelling than the intended light-hearted segment. Meghan, blindsided by unapproved questions, struggled to maintain her composure while pushing back against what she saw as an attack. "I'm not trying to create controversy," Nate said evenly. "I'm trying to have an honest conversation. Isn't that what good journalism is supposed to do?" "Good journalism," Meghan replied, her smile gone, "means asking questions that serve the public interest, not fishing for sound bites to create drama where none exists." The interview was slipping out of control. Everyone in the studio felt it. What began as a routine promotional appearance was becoming openly confrontational, and neither side was backing down. The air grew electric as cameras rolled, and both seemed to forget they were on live television. Determined to make their points, Nate leaned back, unfazed by Meghan's resistance. "I think our viewers are smart enough to tell the difference between real journalism and sensationalism. When I ask about the authenticity of celebrity charity work, it's because people across America are already having that conversation. They want to know whether celebrities genuinely care about the causes they promote, or if it's just brand management." Meghan's eyes flashed with anger. "Brand management? Are you suggesting my work with food insecurity, women's shelters, and education programs is some kind of marketing strategy?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Nate replied, keeping his composure. "I'm asking directly how you respond to people who are skeptical of celebrity charity work." "I respond," Meghan said, her voice tightening, "by pointing out that while we sit here debating motives, there are real people being helped by real programs. The families I saw at the food bank yesterday don't care about my so-called brand. They care about the meals their children are getting." "That's admirable," Nate acknowledged. "But you must understand that when someone has the platform and resources you have, their actions will be scrutinized. It isn't personal, it's the reality of public life." Meghan gave a sharp, humorless laugh. "Not personal. Nothing is more personal than having your motives questioned every time you try to do something positive. Do you think I need the publicity? Do you think I need the platform? I could stay home and live quietly. But I choose to use what influence I have to help others, and that choice comes with scrutiny," Nate pressed. "Isn't it fair to ask whether the positive press that comes with charity work influences the choices themselves?" The question hit a nerve. Meghan's media training began to crack. "You know what drives my decisions? Growing up with struggle, knowing what it feels like to be powerless, and understanding that if you can help, you have a responsibility to do so." "I respect that," Nate said, though his tone showed he wasn't finished. "But you also need to acknowledge that your platform, your resources, your ability to help all of it stems from your connection to the royal family. How do you separate your charitable work from the privilege that position gave you?" The studio went silent, except for the hum of the cameras. Meghan stared at Nate for a long moment, weighing her words. When she finally spoke, her voice was ice cold. "Are you really suggesting that any good I do in the world is invalid because of my personal relationships? That every effort I make to create a positive impact should be reduced to gossip about my marriage?" "I'm not reducing anything," Nate answered, fully aware he had struck a nerve but refusing to retreat. "I'm asking legitimate questions about how privilege and platform intersect with charity work. These are conversations happening in academic circles. In policy discussions in communities across the country," Nate said. "Academic circles," Meghan repeated with mockery. "Policy discussions. Let me tell you what's not academic or theoretical. The woman I met yesterday who hasn't had a full meal in 3 days because she makes sure her kids eat first. The teenager aging out of foster care with nowhere to go. The immigrant family afraid to access services because of their status. These aren't abstract concepts for me. I'm not suggesting they are, Nate replied, his voice steady despite Meghan's rising hostility. But when someone with your profile speaks about these issues, the conversation inevitably becomes as much about you as the causes themselves. How do you navigate that reality? Meghan's composure finally snapped. How do I navigate it? By focusing on the work while people like you insist on making it about everything else. By answering the same cynical questions again and again while the real issues I'm addressing get lost in the noise. But don't you think, Nate continued, seemingly unfazed by her anger, that addressing those questions directly is part of the responsibility of having a platform? Doesn't transparency about your motivations and methods actually serve the causes you care about? Transparency, Meghan shot back, her voice carrying across the studio. You want transparency. Here's some. I didn't have to come on this show. I didn't have to sit here and take these kinds of questions. I could have stayed home, stayed silent, and avoided having every move dissected by people who've never done a fraction of the work they're so eager to criticize. In the control room, producers scrambled to decide what to do. This was live television, and their carefully planned segment had gone completely off script. But the confrontation was so compelling, no one dared cut away. Nate, perhaps realizing he had gone too far but still pushing, asked the question that ended it all. So why did you come on the show, Meghan? If the questions are so unreasonable, if the scrutiny is so unfair, why subject yourself to it? Meghan stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. You know what, Nate? That's a great question. Why did I come here? Why did I think I could talk about important issues without having to defend my right to care about them? I'm not questioning your right to care, Nate said, rising to now aware the interview had fully unraveled. I'm asking legitimate journalistic questions. Legitimate journalistic questions. Meghan repeated with disdain. Is that what we're calling this? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like the same tired playbook tearing down anyone who tries to do something positive. The confrontation had reached a boiling point. Everyone in the studio knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. Morning television's polished facade had crumbled into raw, unfiltered conflict. The cameras rolled on as civility evaporated by face-to-face now. Meghan and Nate abandoned all pretense of a polite interview. You want to know the real problem? Meghan said, her fury echoing across the studio. The real problem is that people like you can't stand the idea that someone might actually care about something beyond themselves. You're so cynical, so convinced everyone has an ulterior motive, that you can't recognize genuine compassion when it's right in front of you. Nate, startled but resolute, shook his head. That's not cynicism, Meghan. That's journalism masking the hard questions. If you can't handle scrutiny, maybe you're not ready for the platform you're trying to use. The words landed like a slap. Meghan's face shifted from shock to hurt to rage in seconds. Her voice, when she spoke, was dangerously quiet. Not ready for the platform. Let me tell you about being ready, Nate. I was ready when I gave up everything I knew to marry into a family that never wanted me. I was ready when I endured years of racist attacks from the British press. I was ready when I had to rebuild my life from scratch. And I'm more than ready to handle questions from someone who thinks gotcha journalism passes for meaningful conversation. This isn't gotcha journalism, Nate protested. But Meghan wasn't listening anymore. You know what it is? She pressed, her voice rising again. It's the same pattern I've seen over and over. Every time I try to do something positive, every time I use what influence I have to help others, there's always someone like you waiting to tear it down. You question my motives. You suggest I don't deserve the platform I have. That's not what I'm doing, Nate insisted. But his words were lost under Meghan's rising fury. Yes, it is exactly what you're doing, she shot back, pointing directly at him. "You invited me on this show under the pretense of talking about charity. And you've spent the entire time undermining everything I'm trying to accomplish. You want transparency. Fine, here's some transparency. This is exactly why people with resources sometimes don't get involved. Because there's always someone waiting to tear them down for even trying." In the control room, panic had set in. It was live television, too big to cut away from, too volatile to let keep running. Phones buzzed, executives were consulted, security quietly alerted. On set, Nate tried to pull things back. "Meghan, I think we both need to take a step back. This has gotten more heated than either of us intended." "Oh, now you want to step back." Meghan laughed bitterly. "Now that you've got your dramatic television moment, you want to be reasonable? You got exactly what you wanted. You turned what should have been a conversation about helping people into a circus. That was never my intention," Nate said, his composure cracking for the first time. "I asked questions I thought our viewers deserved to hear, answered your viewers." Meghan shook her head in disgust. "Your viewers deserve better than this. They deserve better than watching someone's charitable work torn apart for entertainment. They deserve better than seeing important causes reduced to gossip and speculation." A producer hovered at the edge of the set, signaling to wrap things up, but the two were locked in. "You know what the most frustrating part of this is?" Meghan said, her anger now tinged with hurt. "I came here in good faith. I thought we could talk about real issues affecting real people. Instead, you turned it into an interrogation about my personal life and my motives. I asked about the intersection of celebrity and charity work." Nate countered, frustration breaking through. "Those are important questions worth exploring. Meghan's voice dripped with disbelief. "You didn't explore, you attacked. You questioned my authenticity, my motives, even my right to care. That's not exploration. That's character assassination." The tension in the studio was unbearable. Cameramen shifted nervously. Technicians checked levels. And everyone knew they were witnessing a moment that would be replayed for years. Nate tried one last time. "Meghan, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My questions weren't meant as personal attacks. They were meant to spark meaningful dialogue." Meaningful dialogue. Meghan's voice was filled with contempt. There was nothing meaningful about this. This was a perfect example of why people with good intentions stay silent, because there's always someone ready to twist their efforts into something ugly. Security appeared quietly at the set's edge. Meghan spotted them, and her expression shifted, anger fading into something closer to resignation. "Perfect," she said sharply, gesturing toward them. "The perfect ending to this disaster. You got your dramatic television moment, Nate. I hope it was worth it." She tore off her microphone. "I came here to talk about helping people. Instead, I got ambushed by someone more interested in controversy than the work being done to solve real problems." "Meghan, please," Nate tried, but she was already walking away. "No," she called back. "I'm done. I'm done with this interview, with this network, with journalists who think tearing people down is doing their job." The guards escorted her out, not forcibly, but because the situation had unraveled so completely that everyone needed protection from its fallout. As she reached the exit, Meghan turned one last time. "You want a story, Nate? Here's your story. Someone tried to do something good, and you turned it into a spectacle. Congratulations, I hope your ratings were worth it." She was gone. The studio was silent. Nate left standing, stunned, as the cameras finally stopped rolling. The fallout was instant. Clips spread across social media within minutes. What had begun as a routine appearance had exploded into one of the most dramatic clashes in television. History, a collision of perspectives on journalism, celebrity, and responsibility. And the debate began. Was Nate right to ask hard questions? Or did he cross a line? Was Meghan justified in her outrage, or did she overreact?